welcome everyone. Lovely to see you. I will introduce myself just a little bit. In fact, no, I'll be polite as the speaker and ask Nick, would you introduce yourself first?
Men first?
Yes.
It's one of those sessions.
Absolutely. Start as you mean to go on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Nick Beighton. I'm the former CEO of ASOS. I was there for 13 years. Under my tenure, it grew from around 200 million revenues to 4 billion. I was then at a short stint at Matches. Currently, I'm the chairman of Secret Sales. I'm on the Retail Sector Council, and I advise the Anti-Slavery Collective on eliminating modern slavery in fashion supply chains.
Thank you, Nick. And we've been talking off stage, we've been talking beforehand, so we have a kind of content-full agenda of answerable questions and sometimes unanswerable questions, but maybe they're philosophical ones. Just a little bit about me. I've worked in the fashion industry for well over 40 years, interested specifically in the experience of the people in the system. So in the early days, it may have been those who were buying the clothes. Were they represented? Did they feel they were being shown unachievable body ideals? And of course, later it became an understanding around garment workers. 10 years ago, I took a Master of Science in Applied Psychology because I kept coming up against barriers to what I felt was important change. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about human motivation, take some science into the room, not just feminism. So, Nick, thank you. I'm really thrilled that you're here because you're going to give us an insight into a space that few of us actually can know and understand. So, I just want to talk a little bit about your style of leadership. Increasingly, and studies show that emotional intelligence is a vital aspect of good leadership. It's the empathy, it's the collaboration, it's the nurture. It's not just the hard-nosed competitive gene or the risk-taking. So tell us a little bit about your leadership style.
Thank you for the question. On the best day, I'd like to think I was humble and listen to everything that my team tell me. And that's how I'd like to see myself. But I can tell you I've adapted my style. I was once a chartered accountant, and I was obsessed by profit margins, sales growth, and EBIT. And it was during my time at ASOS when I actually listened to the people around me, listened to the suppliers, listened to my teams, that I realized I didn't want the brand to be famous for selling more dresses than anyone else, which ended up in landfill. And I didn't want the brand to be famous for doing things the wrong way. I wanted the brand to be famous for something that was far more than all of that. So I guess my style adapted as I listened and learned and thought about the things I was responsible for. And then I was guided by this mission, which came to me during my leadership role, because leadership is not a right, it's a privilege. When you have leadership and you have influence, do something with it. So that was how I tried to adapt my style all the way through my time.
So how high were you able to place social purpose on your agenda?
So it came to me in various forms. I remember when I first was appointed CEO, I did the big jazz hands with the organization. And then I went into some smaller groups and I said, I want the brand to be purpose-driven, mission-led, guided by values. And I hadn't quite formulated what they were. And I actually thought they sound quite good things for a brand to be. So I said, that's what we're going to be. And then I sat and listened, and I was in the buyers session. There's about 40 buyers. And there was a lady called Amy, who is our swimwear buyer, put her hand up and said, Nick, I've heard you talk about purpose, mission, values. I've got something a bit more simple. She said, I can buy this bikini and get 60% margin, or I can buy this bikini and get 75% margin, but I'm not sure about the where it's been sourced, the human rights and supply chain. Which one do you want me to buy? And I kind of sat and listened to her, and I went, this could be one of those moments where I totally screw something up, or I learn. So I asked her which one she wanted. And she said, I want to get the 60% one, Amy. So I went, how long will it take to build the margin? She said, if we do it successfully, do it this, we can probably get to 68% margin. I went, do that, Amy. I knew I'd got a problem because the buying director was beating me up the following morning about his targets. But that was the first thing that came to me, and I went, maybe we need to think differently about how we're deploying our skills, how we're allocating our resources, and how we're incentivizing our people. So that was the first time that it really hit me. And then as I listened more, and we had various things that affected me, we had a child labour issue in Turkey, and I sent a couple of our team to find it out. I kind of started to formulate going, our brand needs to be different. And we went back to the origins and went, we're going to do great fashion, but we're going to do it with integrity. And we do it with integrity, we do it in a way that people can look at the way we've created this fashion. They'll look at the way we've chosen to produce it. They'll look at the producers we are using and the manufacturers we're using and go, I don't need to worry about that because we know ASOS has taken care of it.
So you've just described a situation in which you could bring that collaborative, empathic approach, but it sounds like you had to answer to people above you. Had you made the right decision, or certainly people looking at the number crunching, the quarterly profit return, your job rests on this. And ultimately, the elephant in the room always is unfettered capitalism without ethics in it, without people in it. So, how do you walk this path as a CEO? It must be, if you're trying to do right, it must be really stressful.
Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, I didn't see myself answering directly to the board, although I did.
Okay.
I saw myself accountable to the customer, and I saw myself accountable to the stakeholders in the organisation. Our people, our suppliers, and our board were all part of that. And if we did the right things in the right way, the outcomes would be better and shareholders would be happy. So that was the path I took. Now, they didn't always follow it. I was lucky enough that I had results on my side that meant they went with it. But that was how I saw my accountability in a multiple place of stakeholders. And I wanted consumers to choose us because it was great fashion and done well. I wanted suppliers to work with us because they shared that vision. And I said to the board, if we follow this journey, we'll influence an industry and we'll build a much better brand, and a brand that's worthwhile.
Do we think, and certainly maybe we can look at how we unpack this, but ultimately shareholder primacy is counterproductive to the ethics that we want in our businesses, because we have got a pressure from outsiders who are constantly looking at their reward. So you're, in a way, educating shareholders out of profit greed has to be an important contemporary energy for all businesses, because otherwise it's just lip service about change.
It's a really interesting point. So I am an unashamed capitalist. I think it's one of the most successful models humans have invented. But unfettered, it creates problems and it leaves people behind. It creates issues. That's why you need leadership in governments, in businesses, in brands, or whatever level to go, this is how we're going to do it. So a social capitalism, a conscious capitalism. Otherwise, unfettered, it takes you to the wrong place. Overall, it gets a better result for the most, but it leaves people behind and things behind and leaves holes. So the way I reconciled this is we got to our purpose as a brand. Our purpose was to give people the confidence to be whoever they want to be, expressed through great product and great experiences. And purpose should drive our profit. Profit shouldn't drive our purpose. And we needed profit to be a business so we could employ more people, work with more suppliers, enrich and change the ecosystem. Without it, we couldn't do it. So we needed both. So I went, purpose drives profit, not profit drives purpose. Profit without purpose is empty. Purpose without profit is philanthropic, and we're a business. So that was how we tried to reconcile it internally.
Nonetheless, you're still dealing with a requirement from shareholders that they see They see the rewards in their bank account. And at this moment, with shareholder primacy being the only goal in the Articles of Association, that the Better Business Act are obviously looking to dismantle, to include people and planet, we're not going to get anywhere until that happens, are we?
I agree. So regrettably, in the 14 years I was running a public company, I was asked a handful of times about our ESG policy, our fashion integrity policy, how we're paying workers the right wages, how we're dealing with our suppliers. And I had 4 structured meetings a year for 14 years. And probably 100 people every quarter. So I was asked very limited times about it. However, in defense of that, because we should be balanced, I am seeing over the last few years a growth in ESG funds, a growth in people wanting to see it. Several years ago, there was a brand we worked with based in Manchester who had a massive capital shock when their labour standards were exposed. So that will lead to capital markets factoring in different objectives into their investment criteria. And I know how we can solve this. We could easily say, as part of management return, a percentage of everything you earn through bonus, through your long-term shareholder targets, must have people, planet embedded in the reward. And so the measures will be tricky, but if you turn around and said 10% of everyone's LTIP should be on sustainability goals, on people goals, then all of a sudden you can use capitalism to change the agenda rather than just allowing it all to be EBITDA growth. And in a long-term view, consumers will come to that. And if you start doing that, you'll start future-proofing your business. And that's what capital markets are really interested in, future-proofing the organisation.
The question obviously is, have we got the time for long-term and for people to engage, to sort of move away from the focus on profit, move away from the focus on expansion, move away from the focus on business status and competitive behaviour. I asked you when we were standing there, and I said, I'm not a businesswoman, but I said, why isn't it possible for people to just run a business that they love, that they do well, that they get real satisfaction from engaging with a small but local customer base, they know their customers, and they work it like that, they pay their bills. Why is there this expansion space for everyone to almost be sort of manipulated into, conditioned into, that dominant culture doesn't give status to small, beautiful, thoughtful, artisanal businesses?
Yeah, no, I get that. It's the craftsmanship and artisanship versus scale. I recognise the dichotomy. I actually think we should have both, and we should love both. And in my area of expertise, fashion, clothing, and e-commerce, I think you can take all the elements of what a craftsman and an artisan will do, better materials, better sourcing, better customer connection, and put it into scale. It's hard, but it should be worth it. So I think you can do both. And actually, I'd want a world where we celebrate the artisanal approach and we celebrate scale, but it's got to be done well. And one of the things that's always missing in the P&L account is the cost of the resources, the cost of the planet, the cost of the things we're doing to the planet. None of that is factored into our P&L account. And so our prices, therefore, are too low, and it's something that will come back and bite us. And it will come back and bite us. There might have been a moment, if I drift a little bit, where during the pandemic, people start to think about the planet might be biting back, but that's gone again. Yeah. And we probably need a couple of blue planet-style moments to reshape people's thinking and agendas to go, maybe I shouldn't buy a dress that's cheaper than a cup of coffee without asking a question. Maybe I should be thinking about something that's very different. Maybe I should be thinking about being a shameless re-wearer of garments rather than just wanting something new all the time. However, I'm not a big fan of preaching to customers. Let the customers should decide.
We're going to come back to customers, but let's just talk a little bit about degrowth. You know, it's a word we talk about, we hear over and over again. We know it needs to come, but we don't know what that's going to look like and how you do operate making less product. That's the conceptual encouragement for everybody who moves into design, that we can't be making as much product as we are, and we have to learn how to run a business that is selling less product. What does that even mean to you when you are selling thousands and thousands of units in a situation like ASOS?
So I would go I don't necessarily think you should make less products. You should make them better. And the solutions are there. You can choose better fabrics. You can choose better fabrication. You can work on transparency. You can work on solutions so consumers can see exactly where it's been made, who's made it, where it's been farmed. And so if you do that, you'll find a natural level of demand. Chasing demand that then becomes markdown, becomes promotion, that's fool's errand. I think we can make clothes better, not necessarily for the right price points. Some people are used to, sorry. Some price points might be gone forever, but I think you can make garments better in a transparent way where you can go, I know exactly where this garment's come from, where the fabric's been made, where the cotton's been sourced, who's made it, what the factory conditions are. And one of the things that used to guide me was, it was a phrase we used a lot, was imagine the factory and the farms had glass walls, and the consumer could see inside who's made it, how it's made, the conditions of it being made, how the fabric's been put together, how it's been farmed, how the waste has been dealt with. Would they still want that garment? And if the answer is no, then you're ultimately accountable to the person in the mirror every day, and you know you're doing the wrong thing, so you can do the right thing and change it. And there are solutions.
But when you are in the marketplace, as you are, still answering to shareholders, still looking at quarterly profit returns, and then we just had a presentation that illustrated Shein's massive growth and a massive kind of price bribe to consumers. They're putting thousands of products onto market every day. How does for instance, had you been in the position at ASOS then, how do you begin to differentiate and to go forward with when you've got everybody focused on a race to the bottom with price?
Yeah, got it. So I've been lobbying this for a while, and the rise of Shein is something to be marvelled and something to be terrified about. And I oscillate between both. Some of the aspects of that business model I think is genius, but some of the standards of how they're producing garments, the lack of transparency, their renowned opaqueness makes me extremely nervous. I know they are running through a number of tax loopholes that none of our manufacturers here will be able to do. I think that's wrong. And I also think there's a number of things that just need to be squared away and going. I also found it alarming that both government or both parties were courting those to be on the London Stock Exchange. I think the London Stock Exchange should be a premier place for the best brands, the best industries, and the highest standards. There should have been a sort this out, and then we'll come back to you. So I would have been expecting both parties to be pushing greater standards, greater transparency, greater labour rights, and more visibility of fabrics and where it's sourced. To then go, if you do all of those, then you can be admitted to the London Stock Exchange. So I find some of that terrifying. I also, to be fair, I've marvelled at their growth at the same time.
So we come to a space which you flagged up earlier, and you know when we spoke beforehand, you said brands can't do it on their own, and that consumers have to engage
Yeah.
with brands. So are we, do brands, first of all, as obviously the authority to a certain extent, we're often dealing with a younger consumer. If we look at, say, ASOS demographic, it is the brands themselves then that surely have the responsibility to educate their young consumers. And if so, how do you see that happening? I had a little look on the ASOS website. You're not there anymore. But there was no information. It was very hard to find about any stories around sustainability or artisanal collaborations. And even when I typed in sustainability, computer could not find what I was looking for, which I find shocking in this day and age.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I'm sorry that's happened. It wasn't how it always used to be, but I'm sorry that's happened. But let me go back to the bigger question. So brands can't do this on their own. Manufacturers can't do this on their own. And we can't always wait for the consumer to put the weight on the consumer. So if we think about the planet, first of all, there is no competitive advantage by abusing the planet. Because we will all burn on that. So we should collaborate. So where it's about fabrics, packaging, materials, sourcing, there's no competitive advantage from that. So if everyone collaborated far more, we could get better solutions at a decent cost. And so I see no collaborative advantage in that at all. Collaborative advantage in fashion should be design, style, all of that, rather than some of the labour standards. So I think collaboration or co-opetition is one of the phrases I've used before. The problem is most brands are trained to kill each other. And so,
did you say trained to kill each other? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And so by breaking that barrier down and going, we're going to collaborate on this, we're going to collaborate on packaging, we're going to collaborate on plastics, we're going to collaborate on all of this, that should be non-competitive advantage. The other bits are, yes, we should educate the consumer as best we can, and I think the consumer will come. The last survey we did before I left in 2021, 10 years ago, 5% of the 20-something audience said they made purchasing decisions based on sustainable values. The last one we did in 2021 was 20%. So over 10 years, it had gone up by fivefold. But that means 80% don't. And so, but if that trajectory continues, the consumer will come to you. So you then go, let's future-proof our business. You then go to legislation will help, and I've seen legislation coming in France, particularly on disposable clothing, extended producer warranty taxes. That will change that game if that comes to pass. Then capital markets should start reading long-term customer trends and going, I'm deploying capital around brands and producers that do this. Shareholders will then drive behavior of management, and management will then go, I need to future-proof my business, so I'm going to be there for the consumer. But that is a cycle that will take time. But most of these cycles do take time. So all the things that humans have done that have not been great over history take several cycles before they come to a better place. So that is how I think you'd start to change the system.
On paper, that sounds right. We don't have the luxury of several cycles. Do we need brands, big brands, to put more R&D, research and development money into alternatives that are out there being developed? Laboratory-grown cotton, for instance, I was telling you about, which uses 85% less resources than land-grown cotton and can be grown hundreds of times more productively and considerably faster. If not the brands leading the way, those with the money, with the understanding of the shareholders, then who?
So I'm going to tell a story, first of all, one that inspired some of our thinking. And it was several years ago, we ran an event at ASOS where we invited all our brand partners and manufacturers together to share learnings under the auspices of, if we can collaborate better, we can lower each other's costs or enhance our fabrication. And we had a speaker come from Levi. And Levi talked about the amount of water that was consumed in a pair of denim, and how much recycled denim you could get into a jean before the fabrication and the wearability stopped. And we were listening to all those techniques. And then he said something at the end. He went, and we don't think that IPR that we've developed is a competitive advantage. So we've open sourced it. So any of you can go and have a look at how we reduce the washers, how we do the recycled content, because we don't think that's a competitive advantage. And actually, we think that's something you should all share and do the same. So my response to that is, if people then worked laterally and cooperated more, even if the budgets aren't immediately there, you could pull the budgets and make a bigger breakthrough.
Thank you. We've got 5 minutes that we can continue talking, but after that it's going out to questions. So we will have a 10-minute series of questions. I think we might have a roaming mic. Can I? Yes, thank you. So just have a think of, it's amazing that we do have open access to your thinking around big brand process, an insight for many of us that is useful. Clearly, we've talked a little bit about the idea that brands need to think about clothing, sort of the back end first. How does it deconstruct? We've talked about low-impact monofiber clothing so that we can work in a different way. But actually, what about if we all got together behind the ecocide law, for instance? Do you see that being something where we can educate consumers, we can become one to push this law through, to stop big exploiters, big industrial exploiters, not just clothing, of helping themselves to free and natural resources? What?
Wow.
Just saying.
Emotionally, I'm totally with you, Caryn. It's almost like the missing part of our understanding and our P&L accounts is the irreplaceability of the natural resources. And I really get that. So I don't know the answer to that question. Emotionally, I'm with you, and I feel like tying myself to Buckingham Palace gates with you and protesting. But I try to think about how we get there. One of the ways out of this, as well as co-opetition, as well as the things I've just described, is the concept of circularity. But right now, I think it's just a concept because it's broken. And if we follow the recircularity and we start off with, let's think about the after use of this garment when I make it, you could plan for certain things. We talked earlier about it. Let's say denim jacket. Denim jacket, you could reuse the buttons, reuse the zip and the metalware. You could probably get about 35% recycled fiber in a new pair of denim. If you did that, you transform the natural resource that are used in denim, which is something we all love and want to wear. And if you then go, right, if we think about a monofiber's got better chance of being recycled and broken down and being respun into a new yarn. So let's use monofibers. Then you think about, let's take away some oil-based yarns and make it more natural yarns. Then you go, we haven't got enough natural yarn, so let's invest in different forms of cotton. I've heard banana cotton, mushroom leather, lots of things like that. I've got banana cotton socks actually. There's a lot more technology that we can apply to it, and the human brain is capable of amazing things if it's freed up to solve. So those are areas we should solve. You then go into, okay, we're going to make it better with an after use in mind, so we can take it apart and recycle it. Then you go, how are we going to capture the garments that are discarded by people? Well, there's no garment bags at the back door in the UK. There's very few roadside collections. We end up going to a charity shop and think we've done our job. We haven't. Yeah. So you then go, if we recapture the discarded clothing in the same way we recycle plastic or cardboard, you've then got a chance to create a new industry. So we could create new industries, recapturing fibers, recapturing plastics, recapturing yarns. And those are embryonic. That could be something we could celebrate. That's new industry, that's repurposing, that's powering the circularity.
But it needs investment, and it needs investment from the brands who are making the landfill.
Government, shareholders, and brands. So it's a three-way bit, because they're all accountable for it.
Yeah.
And then we will all benefit.
Yeah.
So the way we tried to solve that was we're going to do the demand side of it. We will buy as much recycled fibre as we can. So we hoped that by having that demand trigger, the supply would come, recognising we couldn't solve the supply.
I'm going to bring us to a close there. I did want to ask, and maybe you can answer this quickly, because I do want to give it to questions. Which CEOs do you respect, having seen them do the best job they can under the circs? And which ones do you think should have been shown the door?
Is that for the audience?
Yes.
Can I ask the audience? I'll take the audience answer first. Wall of shame.
Just in your opinion, I mean, maybe I don't want to put you in a spot where you then you get some...
Some of them might be WhatsApping me shortly.
Maybe you get a kind of a comment on Instagram, but it's not going to be slander if it's true, is it?
So I'm going to respect leaders who understand the balance between a responsibility as a leader and responsibility for the wider stakeholders, which is people, suppliers, planet, and profit. And the ones that balance all of that are the ones that have the most enduring and most successful businesses, and are the ones that I'd like to have lunch with.
Okay, so no names, but
no names.
We can, all right. And anyone you want to say, get that person out of the building.
There's three going through my mind, but I think we're still on video, so we can do that over coffee, Caryn.
Okay, and then I'll post it on Instagram. Thank you very much. I would like a show of hands briefly. We've now got 8 minutes, because I just had to slip. You want a little bit of gossip in, don't you? Anybody like to ask a question? Thank you. Did that lady put her hand up? Nice and loud.
Thank you so much for a really insightful session. I wanted to ask you, Nick, if you go back, because you have worked with plenty of different companies and brands, and I'm sure you have seen quite a bit during your experience. If you go back and all the money is stripped off you and they tell you, here is £5,000, go and start a business, what do you do? What is your third priority that you would do? Because for startups, it's quite an overwhelming world right now, and there isn't a lot of support out there to build a sustainable business from a lot of different aspects. So what is the 3 things that you would focus that is manageable for you as a startup?
Excellent question for all the independents and small businesses. Thank you. Nick, any insights?
Have a why. Put a product behind the why, and make sure there's a market in the gap you're seeing, not just a gap. Because it's easy to see an opportunity, but there might not be a market in it. But everything starts with a why. Humans choose why you do something, and then they buy what the representation of that why is. So have a why, which is the narrative. Have a product behind it, and make sure there's a gap in it. I'll give you something that's non-fashion related that suddenly happened in our house. And I'm going to give a brand shout out because it's lovely. It's a brand that we've come across. It's called Who Gives a Crap?
Oh, yes, we have that.
Do you?
Yes, we do. I like their packaging as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've suddenly taken on in our house. 50% of all their profits goes back to sustainability objectives and planting trees. And I've kind of gone, I don't mind paying a bit more for some pretty coloured bog roll if half of what I give them goes back to investing in trees. So that was a beautiful why for us. It's a subscription model. The product's nice. It's really lovely packaging. And so that's a simple change we've made because we love the why.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent example. Thank you. Just a few more minutes. Yes, thank you.
Can I just ask if you believe in proximity sourcing and made in the UK for all the UK manufacturers that are here today?
Yeah, good question, Jenny. I totally do. I'm a huge fan of proximity sourcing. I tell you why, because the P&L works, the agility works. I think fashion can be done fast without the connotations that we attribute to fast fashion. Nothing can be faster than UK sourcing, done well. And that means you can back demand, reduce markdown expenditure, reduce waste, more agile buys, shorter runs, be more experimental, sorry. And so I'm not a big fan of long and deep. So I think proximity sourcing is very, very important to the future of fashion. And that encourages craft in the UK, right? Why wouldn't we want more craft in the UK?
And also, presumably, there's integrity links as well, because you're immediately in a stronger relationship with that supplier. So
I would want that to be the case.
Yeah. Thank you. Who else? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Nick and Caryn. Yes, my question is, you said something very important in the beginning. You said that if you have leadership and you have influence, you should use it. My question is, what kind of influence you use on government to align with you in order to reduce all that wrong production? So because you're the middleman between those who produce those elements and then those who consume the product. But you also need the government to align with you in order to regulate that. What is your influence under those governments, either in the side of those who produce and the side of those who consume?
Good. So the question was about influence on government?
Yes.
Yeah, I can do many things well, but influence government isn't one of those. But I can tell you for the last 5 years, I've been on the Retail Sector Council, which has been lobbying for fashion and retail as a skill, as a craft, as an industry. If you stand back and go why behind it, and I have hope in the change of government, because the change of government gives fresh impetus, fresh ideas, regardless of your politics. It's a chance to reset and go again. So one of the whys behind me is the retail sector, which fashion is a big part of it, is one of the most amazing industries for social mobility. So you can start off being a Saturday girl and end up in a boardroom. There are very few industries where that's the case. You can explore your passion, your craft, your creativity, and see someone buy your creations. And that's really fulfilling. And it's also about 20% of the UK economy. If I then told you there's no minister for retail, there's no retail strategy, there's no connected policies for it, and there hasn't been for 14 years, so that's one of the missions that the Retail Sector Council are trying to do. A connected strategy, a minister responsible for it, because then if someone's responsible for it, there's a chance that then it's their job, they will drive something through. Recognizing the craft of fashion, the craft of production, the skills of production, the role that retail has in social mobility, and also maturity. From a Saturday lad to a shop worker, all the way to a boardroom, if that's your desire, is something we should behold and treasure.
Thank you. Excellent answer. And I would just like to say to everyone in the room, you can sign up if you are not already signed up to Fashion Roundtable. It does link to influencing government policy. The All-Party Parliamentary Group on Fashion and Textiles is a political arm with a focus on sustainability and social purpose business. So as individuals, we can all learn more. We can all pass it on. And I'm just going to give just a very small example of how that works as an individual. Nobody expected the swing in France away from the right, Marine Le Pen. And when you read on Instagram the conversations about how that happened, individuals were saying it's because we talk to our neighbours, it's because we talk to people and engage them in conversation, the learning, the understanding, the unpacking, the unpicking, all of that, we all have a responsibility to do. I'm very grateful for the knowledge that I have acquired today. Thank you, Nick, very much. And I know you would like to join me in thanking Nick Beighton.